He was invisible to everyone, just the janitor sweeping marble floors in silence. But one night, in a grand hall filled with glittering guests, a billionaire pointed at the old piano and sneered, "Play this piano, and I'll marry you. If not, keep mopping." Laughter echoed, sharp and cruel. No one expected him to even touch the keys. Yet when his hands finally rose above the dusted ivory, what came next silenced the entire room. Could a single song rewrite the meaning of dignity? The banquet hall glittered that night. Crystal chandeliers threw golden light across polished marble, where powerful men in tailored suits and women in flowing gowns laughed without restraint. It was a night of celebration for the elite, where every detail was meant to dazzle. Yet, in the far corner, unnoticed by most, a man in a faded uniform pushed his mop along the edges of the room. His name was David. To the wealthy, he was just another shadow, an extra in the background of their spectacle. David had worked here for years, cleaning after parties he was never invited to. He knew the rhythm of this building better than anyone. The way voices carried in the hall, how champagne left sticky trails, how the piano in the center gathered dust when no one cared to play. That piano, an antique grand, sat silent under the glow of chandeliers. Guests passed it without a glance, as though music had no place among their conversations of wealth and power. David's life was simple but heavy. He came before dawn, left after midnight, and carried home a tired body but a steady spirit. No one asked where he came from or what dreams he once held. To them, he was defined only by his uniform and the broom in his hand. Yet within him lay a secret, a gift he had kept hidden, a story only the piano could tell. And on this night, when arrogance decided to make him the target of a cruel bet, that secret began to stir. He didn't know it yet, but the humiliation meant to break him would instead set the stage for something unforgettable. The laughter started small, just a whisper among the guests, but it spread quickly, rolling through the hall like wildfire. The billionaire, Alexander Harlow, stood near the piano with a glass of champagne in his hand, his voice dripping with arrogance. He was young, brash, and celebrated for his ruthless business empire. To him, every room was his stage, and every person was beneath him unless they carried the same weight of wealth. His eyes had fallen on David, the janitor quietly sweeping near the edge of the marble floor. Harlow's lips curled into a mocking smile. "Hey, you!" he called, snapping his fingers as though summoning a servant. "Drop that mop. Come here." All eyes turned toward David. Some guests chuckled, others leaned in with curiosity. David froze for a moment, his hand tightening around the mop handle. He had endured taunts before, the casual cruelty of those who thought uniforms erased humanity. Slowly, he walked toward the piano, his footsteps echoing in the sudden hush. Harlow tapped the piano lid with his glass. "Play this," he sneered. "If you can make music, I'll marry you on the spot. If not, go back to scrubbing my floors. Fair enough?" The room erupted in laughter. Guests raised their phones, some already recording, eager to capture the humiliation of a janitor fumbling at a grand piano. David's heart pounded, but his face remained calm. He didn't speak. He only rested his hands on the edge of the instrument, feeling the smooth wood beneath his fingertips. For a moment, he considered walking away. Why give them the show they wanted? Why expose the part of himself he had guarded for so long? Yet deep inside, he knew this wasn't just about him anymore. This was about every silent insult, every laugh behind his back. Every night he was treated like nothing more than a shadow. The guests leaned closer, whispering bets about whether he would even dare to press a key. Harlow raised his eyebrows, smirking. "Come on, janitor. Impress us. Or are you only good for cleaning?" David slowly lowered himself onto the piano bench. The seat creaked under his weight, and for the first time, the hall grew quiet. Even the clinking of glasses stopped. His fingers hovered above the keys, trembling, not from fear, but from the weight of the moment. In his mind, echoes of his childhood surfaced, his mother's voice urging him to play, the long afternoons spent at an old church piano, the solace he found in melodies when the world outside turned cruel. Those memories swelled in his chest, steadying his breath. He placed his hands on the keys. One deep inhale, one steady exhale. The silence of the room pressed in on him, but inside his heart, a different silence bloomed. The silence before a storm. And then, he played the first note. The first note hung in the air, trembling like a fragile secret. But then another followed and another, each one flowing into the next, weaving a melody so pure it silenced every whisper in the hall. The grand piano, long neglected, seemed to awaken under his touch, its voice rich and commanding. David's fingers no longer trembled. They danced. The years of hidden practice, the nights of stolen moments at church halls and empty auditoriums, all of it surged out now, unstoppable. His body swayed with the rhythm, his eyes half closed, as though the music carried him somewhere far beyond the marble and chandeliers. The laughter died. Glasses lowered. Cameras kept rolling, but the smirks behind them vanished, replaced with parted lips and wide eyes. The sound was not clumsy or hesitant. It was breathtaking. It was Mozart, flowing effortlessly through the hands of a man they had dismissed as nothing more than a janitor. Harlow's smug grin collapsed. He shifted uncomfortably, his champagne glass trembling as the melody rose higher, faster, until it filled every corner of the hall. Guests who had laughed moments earlier now stood frozen, as if afraid to breathe lest they break the spell. One woman gasped softly, tears shining in her eyes. A man whispered, "My God, he's brilliant." David didn't hear them. He wasn't playing for their approval. He was playing for every insult he had swallowed, for every dream he had locked away in silence. Each note struck the air like defiance, like dignity reclaiming its rightful place. When the final chord thundered, it lingered, deep, resonant, undeniable. Silence followed, heavy and unbroken. For a heartbeat, it seemed the world itself had paused, and then applause erupted. Not polite clapping, but a wave of stunned admiration that shook the hall. Some stood, some cheered, and others simply stared at the man they had mocked, unable to reconcile their arrogance with the truth, now echoing in their ears. The billionaire who had thrown the cruel challenge stood pale and speechless, caught in the music's afterglow. For the first time in his empire-built life, Alexander Harlow had nothing to say. The applause rolled on like thunder, filling every inch of the golden hall. People who minutes earlier had mocked and sneered were now rising to their feet, unable to hold back the awe trembling in their hands. The billionaire stood stiff, his face pale, his arrogance shattered in front of the very crowd he lived to impress. David rose slowly from the bench. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, his palms damp from the storm he had just unleashed, yet his expression was calm, almost serene. He didn't bow, didn't smile, didn't look for approval. He simply closed the piano lid with quiet dignity, as though he had placed the final word on a page that no one else was allowed to rewrite. Some guests rushed forward, showering him with praise. "Where did you learn? How have we never known?" Their voices carried wonder, but David only glanced at them briefly. For years he had lived invisible, his worth measured only by the mop in his hand. Now, with a single song, they saw what had always been there, but their sudden admiration could not erase the years of silence. Harlow cleared his throat, forcing a laugh, but it rang hollow. His cruel challenge had backfired spectacularly, leaving him exposed, humiliated not by insult, but by truth. He had wanted entertainment, but instead he was handed a mirror reflecting his own emptiness. David picked up his mop again, not as a symbol of servitude, but as a reminder, dignity is never in the uniform, it is in the soul. He walked past the billionaire without a word. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any victory speech. The hall would never forget that night. Not because a janitor played Mozart, but because the music stripped away their illusions. It proved what arrogance tries hardest to hide, that greatness, talent, and worth do not belong to wealth or titles. David left the hall as he had entered, quiet, steady, unseen by most. But for those who truly listened, his music would echo forever, asking one unshakable question. How many more people have we dismissed, without ever knowing the brilliance they carry inside?